Welcome back to the Built by Me podcast. Today's guest, Eric Fortenberry, is the founder and CEO of JobTread. If you haven't heard of JobTread, it's a construction management platform that helps contractors and builders run every part of their business in one place and also integrates seamlessly with Nice Job. Whether you're in construction or just building your own company, this one is packed with insight. So let's get into the episode. Welcome back to the Built by Me podcast. I'm your host, Taina.
I'm Mo.
And today we have Eric on the podcast today. Eric, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Eric Fortenberry, founder and CEO of JobTread.
You obviously work in the construction industry with JobTread and things like this. I want to know, what do you think is the single biggest problem when it comes to the construction or the home service industry that no one is really talking about?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, as you guys know, I mean, construction is it's tough. It's challenging. There's a lot of moving parts, and I think the thing that that probably isn't getting talked about a lot, and that people might not know or realize is that it's as contractors, as builders, people that are actually doing the work and kind of managing these jobs, it's really hard to have a good understanding of your numbers and the financial aspects of managing a job. Or again, there's so many different pieces, and I think that the problem is that as contractors and builders, when you don't know where your jobs are getting off track, if you don't know which jobs are profitable, where they're losing money, where things are happening, it can be very hard to scale those businesses, and you have to really dial in and understand your cost, as well as how you're pricing your job to make sure that again, you got to be able to, cover all of your overhead, your salaries, all of your expenses. There's a lot that goes into, actually keeping the lights on at a construction company that a lot of times, people don't factor all of that in when determining how they're pricing their jobs. And every business is different. I mean, some people have more, full-time employees. Some people have offices, trucks. Some people are just, solo owner operators, and they're building it out of their house. I mean, obviously their cost to operate is a lot less. And so there's no one sort of single number or way to determine what your price and what your costs are to operate and to sell your jobs. But it's such a challenge, and unless contractors are organized and using a system like JobTread, where it helps them to really kind of plan those projects, build their budgets, understand their numbers, then it can be very hard to accurately price those jobs and actually hit your target profit margins to make sure that you can keep growing and scaling the business.
There's been a wave of tech companies jumping into the trades as, modern day. It's following just what's available out there. So CRMs, AI, automation tools. Is this industry ready for all of this tech, or are we forcing the change on the workforce that still runs on kind of old school pen and paper?
Yeah, I think it's very hard to force a change, and I don't think we should necessarily try to force something, but I do believe that the industry is ready. I mean, it is a real problem that has to be addressed, and it's pretty known that again, construction is lagging in technology and lagging behind the adoption of software and different techs, but at the end of the day, I think it's gonna happen naturally, because if you don't adopt the technology, and if you aren't leveraging the softwares and solutions out there, it's going to be very hard to keep up. And I think that those more antiquated builders who are kind of stuck in their ways, and they've feel like they've been doing it for the last 40, 50 years this way, unfortunately, that's not going to keep you up to date, and that's not going to keep you competitive with the modern times. And so our focus is trying to meet the contractors where they are, giving them simple, easy to use tools, along with the training and the help to get these things implemented so that they can reap the benefits of having these efficiencies, being able to spend more time with their families, enjoying their lives. So I think it's naturally going to happen, but we have to be there and help, facilitate that happen. I mean, to just kind of drop some software on someone and give them a pat on the back and say, all right, good luck, that's not feasible, right? That's not helpful. We want to be a resource to people. And so, I always encourage people, when you're looking at, and evaluating a technology or software or something like that, you got to look at more than just the actual features and functions. Like, look at what, resources are provided to you. Do they provide support? Do they provide training? Is there a phone number? Is there a real person you can call, when you have a challenge or when you need to know how to do something? Like, are there help desk and materials online? Because like, I think all of those things combined with, finding the right solution can be a really, really powerful thing for a business and can really transform how they operate. So, I think that, it's naturally happening. We're seeing it happen, but, there's ways for the people who are open-minded and looking to, make the jump sooner rather than later. And, instead of kind of being forced into it, like, be proactive and find those partners who can help you accelerate that transition and get up to speed even quicker.
Mm-hmm.
That makes total sense. I mean, I can imagine though, like with JobTread, you guys probably see, you know, contractors from all different shapes and sizes, right? Like everything from like the smaller operator to like the much more larger operation. But in your eyes, like what would you say separates like the contractor that's doing like $1 million from the one that's doing, you know, $10 million? Like what is sort of, is there like a mind, like is there a mindset shift that they've made? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, going from a solo owner operator or a very small team to, to growing. I mean, your first million's the hardest, getting,
For sure.
getting beyond that, does get a little bit, easier, but it's a different set of challenges. And so I think that the biggest difference that we see is, when you start to get, into the larger scale, like you have to invest in processes. You have to be able to delegate and rely on, systems that can bring that consistency, that predictability, reliability. And so it's really more of a shift of like, I'm being reactive. I'm dealing with, kind of the current issue at hand. I'm
Mhm.
firefighting. That's kind of the, very scrappy. Like let's get to that first million, no matter what it takes. However we get there, it's just, a grind. Versus now, if we want to grow from 1 to 5 to 10, we've got to be a lot more, proactive, and we have to be more strategic and set ourselves up to be able to scale, to be able to handle the increased workload. Being able to sell and to manage, a larger number of concurrent projects requires a whole lot more, organization to orchestrate that. And so I think that's where, it kind of goes from, again, just being that hero to, building a machine that's going to produce results, that will be able to, continually build itself and help make sure that you're not dropping balls and that you're not, missing the details, that can easily be missed when you start to scale.
Mm. So, as people are scaling, everyone wants to sell more jobs, but not everyone or everything is actually profitable just because you sell more jobs, right? So, what's the biggest difference between growing your business and just selling more work?
Yeah, I mean, I hear this all the time. People think that, just because they're increasing their sales, that should directly be correlated to, making more money. And,
Hmm.
and that's not the case. Like if you're selling more jobs, with zero profit on them, you could sell all day long and you're not going to make any more money.
Just wasting
If you're
time.
selling jobs that you're not making money, you're actually losing money. I mean, again, it could actually hurt you. And so like, I
Mhm.
think like the biggest thing is like, you got to really understand your numbers to make sure that you are focusing on selling the right jobs that, are going to be profitable to the right customers, that you're
Mhm.
going to be able to, provide a great customer experience, because there's so many ways to lose money in construction. One mistake can tank the whole job. I mean, I've seen, terrible, jobs just go totally south. I mean, that could even sink an entire business, and so the goal is to make sure that, that you understand your numbers and how you're pricing that job so that you have enough profit built in to be able to cover your costs. And ultimately, if something comes up, which, again, things always come up, like you need to have those contingencies, you need to have those built-in cushions so that you can do right by your customer, honor your word, fix those situations that arise and still be able to turn a profit. That is the key here to construction, is making sure that you're pricing those, and that just because you're increasing your revenue, like you also have to have the right margins there. And I would say too, like you got to understand cash flow. Cash flow is king here. Like if you don't, like you may look at your bank account and think, oh, I got $100,000 in that bank account, and like, yeah, we're got all the, all the money in the world that we need. Like, but like the reality is like tomorrow you might need to pay out $200,000
Yeah.
and you could truly be in the hole. And so that's where like, this notion of like, just because you're selling jobs, just because you're collecting money, that doesn't mean that it's your money. And that doesn't mean that it's going to translate into profit. So that's like so important. And people often, they don't understand, even the difference between markup and margin. I mean, like it is a huge fundamental concept that has to be understood, that you need to make sure that you are including the profit into your price that you need to be able to cover all of those overhead and then be able to put some on the bottom line.
I think you touched on a good point, because I know like when we speak to a lot of different businesses, especially like home service businesses, a lot of contractors, you can call them, are undercharging, right? Like pricing is such a like an emotional, sensitive space for anyone that's in the home service business industry, right? And I'm wondering how like if you had some advice, like how do you help them move past that?
Yeah, I mean it's again, pricing, it can feel very, very, very personable, very personal, like, because like they feel like they're, it's like putting a number on your own net worth, right? Like on your own value for this, this job that you're going to do. And so, many people they're afraid that if the price is too high, then they may lose that job. But, again, if the price is too low, I mean, you could end up paying for the job. It's like when we show people like how to use JobTread as a job costing tool, like where they understand like what are their key cost drivers, what are the key elements of this job that could get you in trouble if you don't accurately price it, and then like encourage them, like take the time after every single project, or even better in real time, like you have to take the time to understand what are your costs and are you accurately estimating those costs. If you're coming in under, then like, and you're just constantly losing money, like again, like it's causing you to not increase your price when like it's an absolute must. To give you an example, when I ran the general contracting firm where I built the first version of JobTread out, like we like literally for like over 6 months we were doing these fencing jobs in one particular city for the same customer, where we were actually losing 10 to 12% every single job. But like we never stopped to analyze the performance. We never stopped to do the job costing. Like we had this disconnect between the field and the back office. And like, we didn't understand that we were underpricing. And like, what really happened is we found that like, we didn't ever increase the cost of our material, that had increased, over time, but like we never took that into account. And so we kept selling the job underpriced, and we weren't able to make money on it. We're losing money on it. And it's like, it just goes to show like, it's so important that if you're going to run a construction business, like you have to have the confidence that you're accurately pricing these jobs. And so to do that, you have to know what are your costs. And I think ultimately, like when you can do that, then you can make sure that like, the price is the price. Like you have to have confidence when I go and I say, here is the price for that job. Like this is what it is going to cost you to operate this job, to execute on it. This is what you need to make to cover your overhead, to cover, all of your other expenses. And again, like people need to be in the business to make money. We're not here this isn't a charity. Like you got to earn money so that you're in business in the future. If I sell you a job and then I'm out of business the next month, like, and you have some issue and you got a warranty claim or some problem, like if I'm not here in the future to help, resolve that issue, then like it doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
So I think just understanding their numbers helps them to more confidently price their jobs.
So when a contractor does start implementing their numbers into JobTread and they start seeing it clearly for the first time, what's their typical reaction?
It's I would say there's kind of equal parts, shock that they did not realize, that they were underpricing their jobs, but then it's also a relief, again, like, having the insight and the understanding. Like so many people, when you're not using a tool like JobTread, like again, like a lot of times you're kind of just making up numbers. You're taking your best guess at what it might cost and what how you need to price it. And so like by giving them that like concrete, data, it's such a relief to say, okay, now we understand our cost and now we know why we need to price it at this level. Yeah. And so again, it really is, it's like this like burden gets lifted off them. This like mysterious black box of pricing is just kind of, opened up, and like now you get it, and I think once you can really refine your pricing strategy and your numbers, and know what your gross profit needs to be, and know what your net profit targets are, like that again, it's such a relief to people that they can now more consistently and confidently price those jobs.
I think it also plays a part in the reputation of a company, right? Because when you look at some companies that will come out and let's say they price you on a job and then they have to call you back and say, "Oh, actually, sorry, it's going to cost you this much instead." It's just like you start losing the confidence in that, you know what I mean, the contractor, because you're just like, okay, this person clearly doesn't know what their numbers. They don't know how. Like, I don't even trust them with the job anymore. So there's something that goes kind of hand in hand with like being able to actually understand your numbers, and the reputation of your business. But I want to kind of switch gears and I want to talk about like sort of the state of the industry right now, right? Because I think this is a hot topic in terms of what's happening. Obviously, like, labor shortages, rising material costs, some economic uncertainty in different parts of North America. What do you see sort of happening in the construction industry in the next 2 to 3 years? Because it does feel like a kind of an up and down. There's always going to be ups and downs, but I'd love to get your take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we're going to continue to see a lot of consolidation in the industry. There's again, there's kind of these two camps, right? Like the well-run companies, they're going to be able to grow stronger. They're going to be able to win more jobs. They've got systems in place, processes. They can, consistently deliver, exceptional customer experiences. Like they're getting the 5-star reviews, like they're getting that awareness of who they are, what they're doing from a marketing standpoint. Like they're the ones that are going to win. It's going to be that other group of contractors who, they're not leveraging technology. They're not keeping up with the times. They don't know their numbers. They're underpricing jobs. They're cutting corners. They're delivering, shoddy work. Like those people, that they're going to go out of business. They're going to get burned out. They're going to end up with a bad reputation. There's a whole host of challenges, that are going to come about. And with, again, the modern, internet today, like you can go and look up reviews and see, like it comes to the surface. Your reputation is everything in this industry. And, when you cut those corners and you deliver a bad product or service or experience, like that will become known. And so it's going to be harder for those companies, to survive. And so I think, again, some of the larger ones are going to just, start to kind of either, gobble up the smaller ones or just beat them out on marketing and sales. And, we're going to see them to continue to grow and be very, very successful. The demand for construction is not going anywhere, though.
No.
There will always be more demand than there is supply. It's about who's going to be positioned to capitalize on that and continue to deliver and grow. Because I think, again, with things like Night Job, like people will find out who the good contractors are and who the bad ones are, and the bad ones are gonna, they're gonna struggle and eventually probably go under.
So, as you mentioned, there's always going to be a demand for construction. There's a new generation of people entering the trades in general. They're more tech savvy, entrepreneurial, Gen Z, right? So, what do you think this shift means for the future of the industry?
Yeah, I think it's extremely exciting. I mean, it's the next generation of contractors. They're they are growing up with these tools. They're growing up a lot more tech savvy. They this is second nature to them. So like they're going to expect better tools, better data. They're going to expect workflows, automations. Like they just naturally understand the value of software and technology. And so like I think they're going to they're going to really help professionalize the industry. They're going to raise that bar, for what is an acceptable customer experience, what is an exceptional customer experience. And I think they're going to really help sort of accelerate this shift from the pen and paper, the old school ways, into this digital era.
There's also a lot more educational resources available as well. So learning from other people's mistakes or learning from other people who have been in the position where they want to. There's things like this podcast and there are many other podcasts, books, and people to learn from just even online for free. And then also resources that they can pay for to grow. So I also think that's a huge plus that wasn't there before.
Absolutely. They're obviously consuming it a whole lot more than some of the older generations.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing we see is like, obviously with like JobTread, you as a founder, have sort of lived that industry, right? Like you came from this industry and then you sort of built a solution for this industry. Do you think, like, because we see a lot of, like, I mean, Taina mentioned there's a lot of, new tech companies popping up all the time, but do you think that founders need to have sort of lived that pain of the customer before sort of building that solution? Because, you know, experiencing, like, charging less than you should have for those fence jobs, and then being like, okay, we're losing money. There's got to be a better way, and then getting to that point of where you are today with JobTread. It's like, what's your sort of, like, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Both of my software companies, I built them from a needs basis. I personally very much believe that it is so helpful to truly understand, you know, the pain by living it. And when you're solving your own problem, like when those pains come up, like I promise you, there's no way to solve a problem faster than when you feel it yourself.
Yeah.
Like your foot is on fire, you are going to put that fire out right away. I promise that. Like it's just a natural instinct. Do I think it's required? I mean, not not necessarily. I do know there's a lot of successful companies out there that may not have built something to solve their own problem or have truly lived it, like I have and our team has. But I think what matters is it's empathy, and it's having a relentless focus on understanding your customers' problems and listening to them, and being able to have ways to just like keep a pulse on their experience, and on their challenges and their frustrations, and like whether it's with your service or whether it's just with whatever they're going through, like by having that like really deeply connected relationship with them. I think that's going to help you to better solve their problems, than somebody who is just kind of creating something but doesn't truly understand it. Like I see a lot of companies that again, it's some person thinks like, oh yeah, this is obviously a problem, I'm going to go build some solution, but like they
Right.
kind of miss the mark.
Yeah.
And they're just chasing this dream of, I want to create this really successful and lucrative software that I can turn around and sell one day. Like that's not going to take you very far. I think the market sees through that. I firmly believe in living, and solving, my own problems. I think that's what gives me and all of our team. And we recruit people who have come out of the construction industry, who know and understand what it's like to be at a construction company, whether they own the company, run it, whether they're a project manager, estimator. Like we very loosely do we define construction experience, but like that's something like I can't train somebody to just innately understand the pain.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
There is a level, like a deeper level of understanding of the problem when you've lived it. Like you mentioned, you're going to solve your own problem, but probably more efficiently as well, because you'll understand the nuances of things. It's easy to describe a problem to someone and then they come up with a solution, but it's like, oh, that won't work because of this. And they would have known that if they were in it. And I also think that like as you become a founder and kind of and leave the industry, you're not so much in the field. It's really important to listen to the people who are in the field, because new problems will arise, new solutions will also arise as the industry changes, customers' needs change it, and what we're expecting changes. So it's really important to listen to the people who are doing it day to day on the field, kind of thing. Um, but what is something what is your hot take about entrepreneurship? That's something that you believe that a lot of people would disagree with.
you know i uh I think a lot of times people, they and this, maybe this is just a generalization and a challenge of social media. I think a lot of times people look at, an entrepreneur, and they look at a business that, again, is very well buttoned up. They got a lot of success. They see all the exciting times. And like, I think there's this like notion, or just this, under, lack of appreciation that like being an entrepreneur is extremely hard.
Mhm.
And like what people don't see is, for every successful entrepreneur, the dozens of people that failed. And so I think that it's easy for marketing, to make companies look, like everything is going perfectly well and things are great, but like, man, under the scenes, behind the hood, like it is a grind. It is a roller coaster of emotions, the ups, the downs. and it's very hard, especially for the entrepreneurs, who, again, like you might see, them all over the place networking the people, but, a lot of times entrepreneurs feel, when you're at the top, like, it can feel lonely. It can feel like, you don't have other people that understand what you're going through. And so, like, it's just, it's not all, rainbows and butterflies and, like, just like what you might see on the surface, from a marketing and social media standpoint. Like, it's hard, it's a grind. And those entrepreneurs that build successful businesses, like, they work their tails off, and this isn't just like a 9-to-5 job. It's like literally 24/7. Like, I feel like I, am dreaming and sleeping and solving these problems in my sleep. Like, it just totally consumes your entire life. And it's a choice, though. It's a choice to live this entrepreneurial life and to be on this journey, because it is extremely rewarding. It is extremely fulfilling to know and to see, the impact of your efforts, and to be able to see this, like, this little seed grow and blossom and sprout, and, like, eventually, being able to build a team and being able to have, this huge impact on the world around you. Like, I mean, like,
Right.
those are the fruits of your labor, but, like, it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of trial and error, a lot of failure to be able to reach that point. And so, I think it's, it's something that, it's definitely not for everyone. It is not for the faint of heart. Like, any rational person would quit, 10 times over, but it's those entrepreneurs that are just, like, driven, motivated, they understand their passion, their why, and they're, they're relentless.
Well, if there's anyone that's done it well, Eric, it's definitely you with what you've done at JobTread. So huge kudos to you on that. I do want to talk about partnerships though. So, like, obviously, JobTread integrates with other platforms like Nice Job. And I want to understand, like, what your thoughts are around ecosystems and thinking about the future when it comes to service-based businesses, right? Because JobTread does obviously solve a lot of solutions for its customers, but when you're thinking about the future sort of the service-based industry, how do you see that kind of evolving into, like, an ecosystem?
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it, is how you described it there. I mean, like, at the end of the day, every company is going to need solutions. They're going to need technology, software. They're going to need, solutions that are going to help them be more efficient, to operate, to grow, to manage everything. Like, and there is no one size fits all, single, silver bullet. Like, you're going to need different solutions to be involved. But I think where our approach is, and what I believe is critical, is that you create this connected ecosystem of all of the applications that you need to successfully build and manage your business. And so, like, in today's, in today's, day and age, like, there are a lot of older solutions that, that again, back in the day, like, the notion of, like, APIs and being able to connect programmatically, that like, that didn't exist. And
Yeah.
so I think from our standpoint, like, we want to be a platform that can help connect and share information, from one system to the other, so that, like, we can eliminate, duplicate entry, mistakes, inefficiencies, things like that. Like, when I first took over that construction business, like, that I ran, where I built the first version of this out, like, I literally found one place where it was, like, quadruple data entry. They literally had paper walk in the door. They put these timesheets into these folders. They printed off all their bills and all their expenses that came in. They put them into these binders and folders. They put them on the wall, waited for the project manager to come in. Project manager comes in, like, whenever that is, and they, signed it off, and then someone else typed it into this other spreadsheet, and then it had to get, like, reviewed or whatever. And then it got typed to this other spreadsheet, and then it eventually got manually entered into QuickBooks. And, like, my mind almost exploded, right? Like, that is, like, just so inefficient, and it's so error prone.
Yeah.
And so, like, I think that, like, what is so critical here is, like, that you find the solutions that can play well with others. Like, you got to find the right solutions who are, very, very good at solving, whatever specific problem they're focused on, and then be able to integrate those into your, your connected ecosystem, as I like to describe it. Because ultimately, like, that is what is going to deliver the most value, and that is what is going to truly streamline your business, is when you can automate the flow of information, from one system to another, to make sure that, like, in real time, we are sharing information, we're getting it into the right people's hands, at the right time, doing the right things that need to happen. Like, I think that is truly how you set up a business to be extremely successful, is by giving them the right tools that are
Yeah.
all connected and working in unison together to ultimately help you build and scale your business.
Yeah, we're definitely huge believers in using the right tools to grow your business, and having a good ecosystem is imperative to having that growth that you're looking to see. I want to shift gears a little bit and ask you some rapid fire questions. What is one book that's changed the way that you think about business or leadership?
I would go with Marcus Sheridan's Endless Customers. So
Mm,
it's actually an updated version of the earlier version was called They Ask You Answer. But this book, Endless Customers, it really is all about how do you essentially have the right conversations, answer the right questions, be radically transparent, share information with your customers, make it easy for them to work with you, to get to know you. Big emphasis on leveraging videos. I think that would probably be my recommended book right now would be Endless Customers.
yeah, I love that.
What's a mistake that you made early on in your career that you're sort of grateful for now?
A mistake I made early on. I mean, I think, when I think back about the beginnings of JobTread, we were very, kind of sort of, private or kind of like, we didn't openly share information like about all of our updates and the things we were doing. Like, we had these customer town halls and we only allowed our customers to come. Like, we very much like kind of kept, all this like excitement and information about all the great work we were doing. We kept it, kind of just to this customer community, and we
Mm,
weren't sharing it with the larger public. And so I think like, when I read Marcus Sheridan's book, or, at first They Ask You Answer, like, I realized, and I heard him speaking, he's like, man, if you're ever making decisions that, is because like you're scared of your competition finding something out, like you are doing your customers in the market a disservice.
Yeah.
yeah.
Like you got to make it as easy as possible for people to find you and to learn about you and to know what you're doing. And like from that moment on, we literally like opened up all of our product update webinars, town halls. Like we invite the entire public. They're open to anyone, customer or not. We publish everything. We now have hundreds of videos on YouTube, all of our training, all of our entire help desk, everything is entirely public. And like, I think ultimately like that's the reason why we're growing as fast as we are now. I mean, we get, over 500 new customers every single month. And we probably only talk to around half of them. They're just
Yeah.
skipping the sales demo. They go straight to sign up, but it's because we have published so much content, and we just truly have been as like radically transparent as we possibly can. And I think ultimately like that's helped us tremendously to build that trust and create that
Yes.
awareness that, that's paying dividends now. I wish we would have done it earlier.
Yeah, don't gatekeep your information. What advice would you give to someone who's stuck at 500K, who can't seem to get their first $1 million year in construction, who's trying to break that ceiling?
Great question. Again, I got to go back to like, you got to know your numbers, you
Hmm.
got to get organized, like really understand how are you pricing your jobs? How are you executing on those jobs? To the extent that you can raise your prices, like again, so many people are scared to sell their jobs at what I would say is a, worthy, profit margin, but I see people all over the country, and again, it kind of depends on the size of the job, but smaller jobs. I mean, I see them all the way up to 50% profit margin on these jobs. And so many people will tell you, there's no way I could sell like that. I'm never going to win jobs. Like, I'm going to get priced out. And it's about like, you have to learn how to, how to convey the value that you're going to provide. You have to help the customer understand that you're going to be that high quality contractor that's going to provide a great customer experience. And they are going to be there along the way when unexpected unknowns, when chaos erupts, like you are the person that they need to partner with and they want by their side. And like, it's learning how to position yourself to sell the value and your worth instead of doing what you think, the competition is going to come in at, or what the market dictates. Like, you got to know your own value, your own worth. You got to price your jobs correctly. Again, I feel like I've harped on that a lot, but again, it's such a big challenge. But aside from that, I would also encourage people, like I see a lot of people, especially, under that 1 million mark, where they're solo owner operators. They don't yet understand the importance of building a team. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care how smart you are, how great you are at your trade, whatever it may be, like, in order to truly build a scalable, successful business, like you're going to need a team of people around you who are like-minded. They understand your mission, your vision. They want to buy into it. They share the same core values, and like they're better than you. You got to build a team of people who are great at their specific role, because as small businesses, as entrepreneurs, like we want to just keep putting on every hat, and we think we can do it the best, but like that's just not reality. Like you're gonna need to build a team. And so I would encourage people to start to focus on like, what would it look like to build out a team, and then really understand what roles and what are the responsibilities for those people, and take your time to find those people, find the right people. The first person that applies who may be, a family member, a friend, a neighbor, like that does not make them the right person. You got to find the right person who's qualified, who has the experience, who has the desire to come in and work, to achieve your vision, your mission. And when you do that, when you start to build that team, like you can grow so much faster, you can go so much farther. And really the journey will become a lot more enjoyable too, when you're not having to shoulder the weight and carry it all yourself. I think it's a huge way to really transition from, going, kind of under $1 million to getting into the 1, 2, 5, and beyond.
100%. Eric, this was a great conversation. Thank you so much for your valuable insights.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys having me on. Great questions.
Yeah, of course. We always ask our guests, where can people find you if they want to hear more from you, if they want to learn from you, if they want to work with you?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm super easy to find. I'm very active on Facebook, LinkedIn. I would encourage people though, if you want to learn more about JobTread, and again, it's estimating project management software. We have very specifically designed it to work for any sized and any type of construction-based business. If you're selling construction jobs, we can help you to be able to win more jobs, to be able to complete those jobs on time, on budget, and to deliver much better customer experiences. We would love the opportunity to show you that. If you go to our website, www.jobtread.com, there is tons of information on there, tons of videos. Our YouTube channel, like I talked about earlier, is chock full of hundreds of videos. I'd say make sure you're kind of watching some of the more recent ones. But again, we'd love that opportunity for you to reach out. I think our phone number's on the website, or you can directly just schedule a demo, schedule a time to meet with us, and we'd be happy to spend the time to walk you through it and make sure it's going to be a good fit for you.
Thank you so much, Eric. Like Mo said, this has been a great conversation. So many great things that were mentioned. But yeah, thank you again for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And that wraps up today's episode. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and follow us on Instagram at Built by Me Podcast. Share this episode with someone who you think needs to hear it. And until next time, keep building.